welcome to the deep dive. You know, there's that common saying in the business world.
Oh, the hire for competence.
Exactly. Hire for competence, fire for character. It's quite striking when you hear it.
It is.
But what if, often, we aren't really even considering character much when we hire?
And that blind spot, it's surprisingly common, isn't it? I mean, just look at Boeing recently.
Right.
Serious challenges, safety issues, trust eroded. The CEO steps down. And yet the whole public discussion about the next leader, it's all about competencies.
Yeah. Is it an engineer we need? Or an accountant? It's always about the technical side.
Always. Their background, their specific skills.
But what's completely missing, glaringly absent, is that idea of, well, needing strong character-based judgment.
Precisely. There's no talk about humility or integrity or temperance, you know, that patience and self-control.
It really shows a kind of fundamental misunderstanding in how organizations think about talent.
It does. And our mission today in this deep dive is really to challenge that conventional thinking, both for hiring and, you know, promotions too.
Yep.
We want to show you how character isn't just some soft skill. It's actually foundational.
Foundational. How so?
It shapes the whole organization's culture. It hits the bottom line. We want to give you a shortcut, really, to understanding this crucial dimension.
Okay, let's unpack this character conundrum then.
Yeah.
Because it feels like we often get it wrong. A common mistake managers make, right, is just thinking character means values fit.
Yeah. Oh, they fit our values. Tick the box.
Exactly. I've definitely done that. You tick the box. But then there's this overemphasis on certain things, like drive, accountability,
the get it done.
while maybe neglecting things like humility or temperance.
And the consequences of that imbalance, they're pretty serious.
What happens then?
Well, think about promoting someone who's super driven, maybe brilliant, but lacks humility. You're not just getting a high performer.
No.
You might be injecting, frankly, toxicity, flawed judgment, right into the company's DNA.
Wow.
And the ripple effect. People who do have strong, balanced character, they often just disengage or they leave.
Because they don't see those values reflected. They sort of self-select out.
Exactly. So your culture, your organizational culture, it isn't just some poster on the wall.
Right.
It's a direct reflection of the character of the people in it. Every single person.
So understanding character, nurturing it,
Yeah.
that becomes a really powerful lever for change.
Absolutely. But first, we need to be really clear on the distinction. Character versus competence.
Okay, let's define those.
Competence is pretty straightforward. It's what someone can do.
Skills, knowledge, abilities.
Right, and that varies, right? Depends on the company, the job level. We usually assess it with structured interviews, rubrics.
Everyone gets asked roughly the same questions.
Yeah, trying to be objective about the what.
So competence is the toolkit, but you're saying character is fundamentally different. It's about who someone is.
Exactly. It's who someone is and how they became that person. It's deeply personal, tied to their life story.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing is, research has actually identified 11 distinct dimensions of character. They're interconnected, and they have observable behaviors.
Like what sort of dimensions?
Things like courage, humility, justice, temperance, humanity. Yeah. You know, these aren't just abstract ideas. They show up in how people act.
And these are universal. Unlike competencies.
That's right. Universal. And here's the really critical part, the game changer for many people.
Yeah.
Character can be developed. It's not fixed. It's like a habit you cultivate.
That's huge. So it's not static. But you mentioned they're interconnected.
Vitally important. You can't assess them in isolation. That's dangerous.
How so?
Well, take courage. Great quality, right. But courage without humility, that can just be recklessness.
Ah, okay. Someone charges ahead without thinking or listening.
Exactly. Or drive without temperance can lead to burnout or pushing others too hard. You have to look at the whole picture holistically.
Makes sense. So assessing character isn't like those standard competency questions then?
Not at all. It's much more free-flowing, more personalized. It has to honor that individual life story.
But is it still objective? Or does it become subjective?
That's a great question. It is objective and rigorous because it's grounded in solid scientific research about what character is and how it shows up. But the method is more conversational, more unique to the person.
Okay, so how do you actually do a character interview then? What does this conversational approach look like?
Well, first, it needs a separate conversation. You can't really weave it effectively into a standard competency interview. It needs its own focus.
Separate space.
Got it.
Yeah.
And here's something maybe a bit counterintuitive. The interviewer needs to do some prep work on themselves.
On themselves? How?
They need to develop their own understanding of character, Recognize their own biases.
Ah,
Think about a dimension like justice, for instance. To assess that fairly in someone else, you need some awareness of your own background, your own potential privileges or blind spots around fairness.
that makes sense. You need self-awareness to assess others' character.
Absolutely. And the whole vibe should be conversational, not an interrogation.
Right. I read this
Yeah.
great story about the NHL Combine,
Oh, yeah.
where they did these character interviews, and one player afterwards said it just felt like they were getting to know him better. He didn't even realize the interview was over.
That's perfect. That's exactly the feel you want. Natural, respectful curiosity.
And it cuts both ways, right?
Yeah.
The interviewer's character is also on display.
Totally. If the interviewer shows, curiosity, respect, maybe even a bit of appropriate vulnerability, that attracts good candidate.
But if they seem judgmental or imbalanced themselves,
It can absolutely turn top talent off. Your own character as an interviewer can be a deciding factor for a candidate.
so it's a two-way street. Okay, so how do you actually get into it? You mentioned peeling the onion.
Right. You start broad. Maybe ask something simple like, why are you interested in this position? Or tell me about a time you faced a significant challenge.
Okay, standard enough starting points.
But then you listen very carefully. You pick up on threads in their story. You follow where they naturally lead you. You're not ticking boxes like, okay, showed courage.
No direct questions like, are you humble?
Definitely not. You're exploring their experiences, their influences, and you organically observe how different character dimensions surface in their narrative.
I like that. Observing how they weave together,
Yeah.
not just isolated traits.
Exactly. You look for clusters, like muscles working together. There's this mock interview example
Yeah.
where this volunteer, her drive was just immense, immediately obvious. So the interviewer started gently probing around temperance, patience, calmness.
Okay.
But the candidate didn't talk directly about temperance. Instead, she started sharing insights about humanity, collaboration, called herself a constant work in progress, a bridge builder.
Ah, so the conversation flowed naturally to other related dimensions.
Precisely. The interviewer just went with that flow, and it painted a much richer, more nuanced picture of her overall character.
That's fascinating. So their life stories naturally reveal the character muscles they use often, and maybe which ones are less developed.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. In that mock interview, her story shouted drive, courage, accountability, even transcendence, that sort of purpose-driven optimism.
But the temperance piece.
That was the weaker link, even though she was clearly self-aware about it, talked about nearing burnout sometimes.
Okay. And you mentioned some dimensions are always visible.
Integrity and humility, they're almost impossible to hide in a genuine conversation.
How do they show up?
Integrity comes through as authenticity, transparency, just being candid. Humility shows up in self-awareness, being reflective.
But there can be too much of a good thing.
Yes, too much self-awareness can tip into self-consciousness. Too much reflection can become rumination, just endlessly second-guessing.
And watch out for overly polished, rehearsed stories.
Big red flag. It might suggest someone isn't willing to be truly open or perhaps hasn't done much self-reflection. Authenticity is key.
Okay. And practically speaking, you need more than one interviewer.
Ideally, yes. 2 to 4 is recommended. It provides a validity check, different perspectives, and it takes some pressure off the lead interviewer.
And no note-taking during the chat.
Right. It disrupts the conversational flow. Better to save 15-20 minutes immediately after to consolidate notes and insights while it's fresh.
Makes sense. Keep it natural.
Oh.
Okay, so interview's done. What happens next? How do you assess?
You basically classify candidates into one of 4 rough categories.
Okay, what are they?
1, strong across all or most dimensions. 2, maybe weak across the board. 3, unbalanced, strong in some areas, weaker in others, but they're self-aware about it.
They know their gaps.
Right. And 4, unbalanced, but also kind of entrenched in those behaviors, suggesting they're less likely or willing to change.
That's a useful framework.
And an interesting side note from the research, often people who faced significant adversity, maybe systemic disadvantages,
Yeah.
they've often had to intentionally cultivate strong character resilience, justice, courage, just to navigate those challenges successfully.
That's a powerful point. Okay, what about feedback? Do you share this assessment?
Absolutely. Providing feedback, when done well, is incredibly helpful for candidates. They usually appreciate it.
Like that example you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. The candidate who was always told to tone it down. The character assessment helped her see it wasn't about less drive, but maybe more humanity and temperance to balance it.
It reframes it constructively.
Right. And the feedback is always about observed behavior linked to character dimensions, never about labeling the person definitively. This is what we observed.
That distinction is crucial. And it leads back to that point about development.
Yes. This is so important. Character can be developed. Even significant imbalances can be worked on.
And it can happen relatively quickly, faster than learning a whole new technical skill.
Often, yes. Especially addressing imbalances if the person is genuinely committed. Rapid course correction is definitely possible.
Okay, this whole approach, it's not just for hiring new people, is it? What about internal promotions?
Oh, it's arguably even more important for promotions.
Why is that?
Because when you promote someone from within, everyone already knows that person. They know their character, warts and all.
Ah, so that promotion sends a massive signal about what the organization truly values.
Right.
It's a very public statement.
Exactly. Ignoring character in promotions can be really damaging to morale and trust.
So how do you bring character into the promotion process?
Well, 360-degree assessments are a great tool. You can build character dimensions right into them alongside competence.
Get feedback from peers, reports.
And you can use development plans strategically. There was this leader, brilliant technically, huge potential,
What?
weak on humility, humanity, collaboration, just wasn't his strong suit.
Okay.
So his development plan included a challenging overseas posting, deliberately chosen because it was outside his comfort zone, in an area where he had to rely on others, had to build bridges, had to be more collaborative to succeed.
So the posting itself was a character development tool.
Exactly. A deliberate strategy to strengthen those specific dimensions before he was ready for the next big promotion.
Wow. Okay, so when organizations really embrace this, elevating character alongside confidence, what are the results? What's the payoff?
The payoffs are pretty significant, actually. Research links this approach to greater return on assets.
Really? Bottom line impact.
Yes. Also, more effective leaders overall, enhanced psychological safety on teams.
Which is huge for innovation and just people feeling okay at work.
Absolutely. And increased organizational commitment, higher work engagement, it really can become a sustainable competitive advantage, especially in the talent war.
So if the benefits are so clear, why aren't more companies doing this systematically? You mentioned the blind spot.
That seems to be the core issue. Relatively few people, even in HR or leadership roles, really understand this research-based view of character, or they don't know how to assess or develop it.
So there's uncertainty, maybe fear of getting it wrong.
Yeah. Uncertainty and trepidation. We're comfortable talking about competence gaps and training plans. Character feels murkier, riskier to many. It's a critical organizational blind spot.
But the reality is, character is impacting the organization anyway?
Always. It will shape your culture, for better or worse, whether you pay attention to it or not.
So ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Not at all. But by making it an intentional part of your HR practices, hiring, development, promotion, you turn it from a potential liability or just a random factor into a real organizational asset.
It makes you think about how many crucial decisions are being made without considering this whole dimension. It's kind of staggering.
It really is.
So just to recap then, this whole deep dive, it's really been about pushing beyond just competence.
Moving to fully integrate character into how we think about talent, how we make decisions about people.
And maybe a final thought for you listening. If character is always on display, and if it really can be developed, maybe even rapidly, what's one small shift you can make? Maybe in how you observe people at work, or even how you reflect on yourself. Starting today, just a small shift to start unlocking that power.
How might understanding these dimensions, courage, humility, temperance, justice, all of them, how might that change your view on leadership, on your team, maybe even on your own growth? Definitely something powerful to reflect on.